Hello, Malcolm. I'm so excited to be speaking with you today because we are going to talk about universal basic income again, but from a very different perspective. This is one of those really important things because AI is coming for our jobs. We're going to get to this point where I don't know where people are going to make their money. And we've already talked about how the initial UBI experiments that have been run in the United States, where cash transfers have been made in varying amounts to Americans, have yielded very disappointing results in terms of basically, while people report that they make their lives better, they don't have any measurable improvements in health, time spent with kids, or even savings over time.
Yeah, they have lower savings after UBI.
And then anecdotally, I mean, well, not anecdotally, but also when you look at a lot of the cash programs related to various Indigenous American tribes, they also have terrible outcomes. So basically, just giving cash to people doesn't look great.
But let's suppose you have an infinite money well, and you wanted to try to uplift your people. Is that what you're going to be going down here?
Yes. Imagine, but I mean, like, people are arguing, well, but this isn't how it will work with AI. I mean, AI can give you so much more money. So what would happen in a world in which people just have so much money, they can give a ton of money and in-kind services to their citizens? Surely these people will be the ultimate thriving society, the Star Trek of our future. Okay, well, great, because we have a natural experiment where this has taken place, and it's a lot of those really wealthy Middle Eastern countries. So yes, thanks to someone pointing this out in the comments on our other UBI episode, we're going to take a look specifically at the most generous countries in the Gulf states. So we're going to look at especially Qatar, but also the UAE and Kuwait, because they're also pretty spendy when it comes to support for their citizens. And let's be clear, it's for their citizens, not the...
And for people, context here, this isn't something I'm talking about without a degree of personal experience and having, been to some of these countries.
Yeah, and I haven't, so I'm going to depend on you for this.
Exploration of them, knowing people from these countries. And I pointed out to Simone, and she didn't even know this, that in Qatar, there is a common word in the business world called Qatarded. And it is the name for, they call it, so you talk about token Qataris being really, really stupid.
It's basically like a country where everyone is a trust fund kid.
Right. Well, it's more than that. If you want to operate business in a lot of these countries, 50% of it has to be owned by a Qatari or an Emirati, or, depending on, there's different ways of structuring it. But basically, all of the major companies that operate in these countries are forced to hire, give equity to, and give often sort of token managerial positions to some of the native population that really hasn't earned it. And so it leads to, a note here, I'm not saying people in Qatar are stupid or like Emiratis are stupid. This is not the case.
Some of our favorite people are Emiratis.
One of the smartest people I know is an Emirati. Actually, like, genuinely really smart person.
Scary smart, yeah. But also like based and cool and fun. So
yeah, based and cool and fun. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna have to marry one of my cousins, or sometimes you just need to put down a rebellion or whatever.
I would note here that I don't actually see the cousin marriage thing disparagingly. I actually see it's pretty based to admit that your culture has preferences that are non-normative with the urban monoculture and would be shamed by it, and just be like, yeah, that's part of my life. That's my tradition. That's the way I'm different. And as far as the genetic effects, you can watch our videos on this. They're not as big as people pretend they are.
But anyway, so very, very cool. Also really cool looking. She's got this, she wears the full head thing and perfectly circular glasses that look like super nerdy and like work really well on her. So like,
that's your only friend though. They're other and like great.
Oh yeah, I have other, well, I mean, one of them is a famous YouTuber who I've talked about a number of times, Khalid, who's one of the top YouTubers.
Is that the Khalid who was always like, Malcolm, what's my name?
Yeah, that is.
I love him.
So yeah, so his channel, by the way, gets like 5 million views per video. I mean, like famous, right? Yeah. And so there's a lot of really smart people in these countries. The reason why you get this stereotype is it's a stereotype that's downstream of being forced to hire people when you do not have people qualified for these sorts of positions.
Well, or I mean, you could say this is just another example of affirmative action. It just happens to be that this is affirmative action in favor of the dominant group in your
Right.
country.
Like the people I know, they don't need to take the token position at whatever firm in their country.
Yeah,
right?
because they have merit and on their own,
And
they're
on their
ending up in
own,
positions
they
of
can succeed
influence.
anywhere, right?
Well, yeah,
so
I mean, keep in mind, like Colin, for example, that YouTube doesn't have an affirmative action program.
yeah, he can't get anything for that, right?
Yeah.
So the point being is that when you get people who are hyper competent from these environments, they do end up in positions of power and influence.
Mhm.
The problem
Yeah.
is that the hyper competent people from these environments, as would be true of any base population, make up like 0.5% of the population.
Yeah, and the question that we need to ask is,
the question
what
is
happens with the mids? What happens with the lower
not just
ranks?
with the mids, because you get a separate phenomenon, but you need 5% to fill the top positions at these companies, and so you often get incompetent people put in these positions. And it leads to a perception and then a stereotype around people who have to work in these environments. It's like, oh, it's the lazy Emirati coming in again, right? Like who didn't actually earn his position like everyone else here, who didn't actually.
So even people who have merit may not be taken as seriously.
And I remember how comical it was because I went to a startup pitch competition in the Emirates to see what it was like. And there were like people who had like gone through, like gotten money, built like a product and gone up and pitched, and they didn't even have URLs, like working URLs. Like this would be like at the end of like, Y Combinator not having even a website. Like the level to which, like, for a certain class of people in these countries, life is just a LARP is really sad.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting as well because the whole place was styled like Silicon Valley, right? Like it felt like a Silicon Valley pitch place. Like,
well, no, I think in that case, like in that startup pitch competition, and this is the case with many of the industries that they are trying to jumpstart. They're kind of building a set and attempting to jumpstart it, but that doesn't mean that it's homegrown. They haven't this is not a geographical area built around a unique elite world-class university that has for over 100 years through various like literal geological events and also various economic events attracted various risk-friendly autistic people who are going to do brilliant, strange things.
Like San Francisco.
San Francisco. I mean, first there was the gold rush and then there was the 1906 earthquake. Both of those attracted very risk-friendly entrepreneurial people who were like, here's an opportunity. I can strike it rich panning for gold or selling to the people panning for gold, or I can strike it rich rebuilding the city. And then it was, I can strike it rich working in the tech scene. These are people who...
And by the way, I would say for people who haven't... you're talking about how like San Francisco ended up, it drew from all over the world because of the gold rush.
Yes.
People who were into high risk, high reward opportunities. And not like, it wasn't like drawing like one ethnic group or something.
Yeah.
And now you see a cycle of that within that region. And one thing I note, if you don't know people from these regions, like what are they, if you're like, what's their general, my read from having met a lot of them is the general sort of personality vibe. I gave a personality vibe of French people recently, which was not very positive. But
Parisian people specifically, because you haven't really.
Yeah. Is that they are generally very cunning, pragmatic, and very hospitable. Like very like focused on being a generous and good host. And other than that, they're kind of broy, is I guess the word I'd put it. And that's sort of the bundle of personality, which is actually very similar. And actually, I had one of my friends from the region come see where I lived in Texas, and they were surprised at how much the people in rural Texas really reminded them of the people in the Emirates.
That's funny.
And I agree. Like, I think that the two cultures actually do have a lot in common. So I would note here, I think that like naturally, this is a people that could do really well. I think one of the things that holds them back the most is the infinite money generators and the ways that those have been handled by the state.
Yeah, but I still think they make a really good object lesson, allowing us to investigate and explore this concept of generous in-kind services and things approaching universal basic income in a context that's more similar to what we could get in certain AI timelines, and not all. Keep in mind that this is what we would get in the very, very optimistic AI timeline where, for whatever reason, those who end up getting the concentrated small amounts of like immense power, like that, like 0.001% of people and or AIs and or businesses decides, okay, we are going to give a post-scarcity paradise to people. This is what we're looking at. This is not the timeline that we personally expect. We personally expect societies and groups to largely be left behind, and for the very wealthy and very connected to coalesce into walled gardens that are highly secure and very isolated, meaning that most people should prepare for permaculture and basically living off the land and depending on the graces and support of a community that is very tight-knit, that they themselves also support a lot. However, this could happen. This may happen in some areas, and it is already happening in a lot of Gulf states because they have had basically the false jumpstart via oil money of a post-scarcity society. They have so much money, they can just support the life. So let's kind of go over what exactly people are getting in terms of lifestyle support in countries like Qatar, because I didn't know exactly how it worked. I was like, is it UBI? Is it something else? And to be clear, Qatari citizens don't receive a universal basic income in the sense of an automatic regular cash allowance for every citizen, but instead they get a lot of social benefits and subsidies that significantly improve their standards of life. So let's go over what they do get. They get free healthcare. They get free education, including, especially for Qatar, and we've talked about this in other episodes, education abroad. They're one of the biggest donors to US universities, right? They get heavily subsidized or free in many cases electricity, water, and other utilities. Imagine just having all your utilities paid for. They have generous pensions, so they still receive retirement benefits. They get newlyweds get additional financial support. This includes some very interesting in-kind benefits, like free villas upon marriage for some.
And I had villas. I love it.
Yeah, I had to double click on this because I was like, what do you, free villa? Like, sign me up.
What did they look like? Did you find pictures?
I did, yeah. So just for those listening, the villas for newly married Qatari couples, they're modern, they're spacious, they're family oriented. They reflect both contemporary architectural design and higher standards of comfort. To your point about hosting, like they have really nice hosting spaces. They're located within planned communities featuring amenities for families, often with green spaces and play areas and convenient access to schools and shops. So they have 3 to 5 bedrooms, plenty of room for a family. Like, talk about pronatalist. Separate living and dining rooms. They have a kitchen, several bathrooms to accommodate the growing families. Like, definitely this is a focus on families. They have a big focus. They feel kind of compoundy. So there's a big focus on privacy and convenience, and they're very modern. And they look, anyone who lives in Los Angeles, like they'll see these new houses that crop up whenever someone buys a teardown, like in San Diego, that are very like sort of blocky and compoundy. So the architecture is very sleek and contemporary like that, but it also references Qatari cultural aesthetics through some of like the arches and local materials. And they're like I said, in these very new planned communities in many cases. So some of the government developed communities, such as Bliss Villas in Hazoum and Abu Sidra, are described as being designed for comfort and joy and modern living for Qatari families. I'm going to send you a link to the development website for Abu Sidra because it looks like maybe it's not done yet.
And I will note that the thing that she's not mentioning that is actually by far the biggest benefit that you get within these countries is the legal regulations I mentioned around when you need to hire Qataris or you need to have stock ownership by Qataris. Same with the Emirates. That is by far, that's really nice.
Yeah.
That's
well,
really...
that's the really big thing is instead of UBI, you basically have government guaranteed high paying jobs, especially in the public sector. And to your point about there being like an issue of merit, that is something that people have alleged and has been an issue. But apparently there is more focus on reform now. Like, people are being held to higher standards of accountability.
Yeah, keep in mind, my experience with this is like a decade ago. So
yeah, and these roles do involve real work and ongoing modernization. Policies are making the jobs more merit-driven and results-oriented. So
something I'd note about the sort of elite Arab communities that I have engaged with, because the elite Arab communities are very different from the non-elite Arab communities. There's quite it's a very high power distance sort of area in terms of cultures,
Yeah.
which means you get more cultural distance. And so when I talk about Arab culture right now, I'm talking specifically about the culture of the elites. And we have another episode where we talk about how rare democracies have been in Arab majority countries. And I think part of the reason is because the elite culture is so differentiated from the mainstream culture and more competent.
Yeah.
But
back to the villas though, I just want to show you one more. I'm sending you photos from one of the Hazoum villas, like, because I actually found a property listing. This one is for about 1.4 million US dollars. So I think you can also buy properties in these.
Oh my God, they're all like marble and stuff. These are,
I know, it's actually like, it to me, the interior feels very cold and soulless, but it is.
Oh no, all the nice stuff there feels that way. So
Oh.
like when you go to like a prince's palace there or something like that, because I know a few actually, they're like giant rooms that feel very empty and covered in gold often, and like really high beams and everything.
Yeah, it seems like a very high scale hotel room. Just marble,
very
like
high scale,
millennial gray, kind of beige gray,
yeah,
grayish. It's grayish. It's very grayish. Lots of marble.
But the point I was making there is one of the things about these cultures is, remember the first thing I said is that they're very cunning, is and cunning, pragmatic, and hospitable. When you get this sort of cunning pragmatism, which you do get within these cultures in a disproportionate amount, they are like, if you go to one of them, right, like back when I, back then, right? Back when this was more of a problem, presumably, and you were like, hey, there's this problem where people who aren't competent are getting into these positions and it's leading to like lower outcomes.
Yeah.
They're not going to be like an American, like DEI person. They're like, yeah, I mean, that happens. And what's a better way that we could structure things so that our people continue to have disproportionate power? And in the West, people would be like, what do you mean? It's like, well, I mean, it's our money and our country. Why wouldn't we attempt to lift up our people, you knob? Like right now, that's not working well. What's a better way to do it without handing power to outsiders, right? Like that's not a like, I think there's people who might hear this and think that they were in this situation because of some degree of incompetence in the way things were structured. And what you seem to be indicating is even past then, they have been trying to make things better. And you do absolutely see this in these cultures around their elite population, is they are aware of these problems. And unlike the American like DEI scene or something, there is long-term strategy behind it.
This doesn't come from some kind of like, it's not like Venezuelan. Like Venezuela just ruined, like they were like, oh, we have stupid money, like, and then they ruined it all. Whereas in these Gulf states, it's like, oh, we have stupid money, like let's try to turn this into a long-term strategic advantage for our people. And I admire that. And I appreciate that. And again, this is why I want to look to these countries as a case study and look at their success, like learn from their successes, but also learn from their failures. And we're going to get to the failures.
But it's not a case study. And I want to point out here where anyone was acting, and this is what makes it such a good case study, without pragmatism, without practicality, without a long-term plan, and without a degree of, I would say, intelligent ruthlessness.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
and keep, like, these villas aren't dink villas. These are 3 to 5 bedroom. They're like, you're going to have kids, right? Have kids. Make sure that you have kids. And keep in mind, while Qatar gives most of its benefits is like in kind, like, oh, you will get a job and you're going to work for it. And that was another thing that we talked about in our UBI episodes, was that people who received cash transfers, even ones that weren't like that big, worked less. And it wasn't good for them. And same with Native American groups. Like some people chimed in the comments with anecdotes in response to that episode and pointed out how one person was talking about a Native American community that he was aware of that was just like floundering in addiction and just tons of social problems. And then the tribe changed their policy and required more merit to justify any cash payments. And it really started to turn things around. It's clear, and you can also see this with the New Deal, and especially the Civilian Conservation Corps in the United States history, like during the Great Depression. People who participated in that experienced very long-term benefits. And it's clear to me from the data that working for your money and your benefits gives you a sense of empowerment, gives you a sense of purpose. Like you do really need to work for this. So what I really appreciate about Qatar here too, is that while they'll give you free education and healthcare and electricity and water and homes and all these things, they're also like, no, man, you have to work. Like, get a job. I'll give you a job, but you have to work. However, on the cash transfers front, they do nevertheless give pretty generous allowances for people who can't work. So widows, orphans, the elderly, like people over 60, they get, let's see. So for the elderly, they get 6,000 Qatari rials, which is around 1,600 US dollars. For children with disabilities, families get per child just over 1,000 US dollars per month. And for a dependent wife, about 550 per month. And just for normal child who's not disabled, about $274 a month. That'd be huge for us. Like, that'd be great. I wouldn't mind it. So in terms of other countries in the area, and the most generous Gulf countries, and a lot of, like, most of them that are wealthy have benefits like these. Kuwait's the most close to giving universal basic income. They give more direct cash allowances. Some proposals have included sums as high as $50,000 per working age adult per year. But in practice, the direct stipend coupled with employment guarantees and generous government jobs is really how most citizens get their income. And again, I think that's really important. It's jobs. But they do, again, provide healthcare, housing allowances, educational supplements, subsidies for energy and food, and again, guaranteed public sector employment. And I do think that if UBI or some post-AI thing is going to work, it's going to have to be through jobs. An Emirati citizens in the UAE also have free healthcare, free education, including university, subsidized or free utilities, residential land grant or housing, interest-free loans to build homes. Can you imagine? Marriage and birth grants. Because remember when we talked in our Muslim fertility rates one, they were the ones who were like, yeah, we'll give you $16,000 for a wedding. Please get married.
Well, no, I think it's so funny to talk about these countries because there's been a lot of countries that have stumbled into wealth in various ways.
Yeah.
And these countries, I mean, obviously one of the best in terms of how they handled it was, I can't remember if it's Norway or Sweden was their local fund, but the Saudis have done a pretty good job and the UAE has done a pretty good job and Qatar has done a pretty good job. Yeah. And exceptionally good when you contrast it with other countries where it's just the warlord and his family suck everything up. Whereas in these countries, they did the least, they sat down and they're like, okay, so I want to use this to increase the quality of life of my people. And then DEI guy comes in and he goes, you mean everyone who lives in your country? No. We'll treat them like slaves.
Yeah.
My people.
People.
But what he, they can live like they live wherever they're coming from. Okay.
Yeah. It is really, really tough for non-beneficiaries in these countries. Prices are really high for them for food and groceries. It really sucks. I did check to see, because a lot of people have said
not necessarily. I mean, as a non-native, if you're hyper competent, if I wanted to, if I wanted a good, really reliable income, I could probably get it in the UAE.
Maybe, yeah.
Because no, it's not a maybe thing. This is for Stanford MBA type people, it's a known thing, right? If you did very well in the Americas and you are elite class in the Americas, there are certain places that you can go where they always need a really good,
someone to actually work. Except again, I think that they're getting better at really focusing on merit.
Right, they are, but they always still need to bring in, and they're smart about it as well. A lot of these countries, they don't have so much pride that they're not that it blinds them again to pragmatism and cunning. They're okay, but obviously we're not going to have the final decisions being made by, the people who are here on the DEI hire.
I like our freezing stone Pennsylvania farmhouse. I mean, looking at that house.
Oh no, it's a miserable place to live.
Yeah, the villa, it feels like a sterile Barbie dream house. I would just feel existentially depressed in it. And I like the struggle. I like the fact that we can't really afford to pay our electricity.
No, I agree with all that. I mean, it's not the only place in the world that's like that. Singapore is another really good place if I wanted to get a decent, reliable job.
We're not going somewhere so hot. Oh my God, no.
Yep. Well, the UAE is pretty hot as well. So is Qatar.
Yeah, but they have free energy, so you can just do air conditioning forever.
But you know why I can't live in any of these countries? I don't know.
Because you just called them Qatarded, maybe?
No, they're
Because you've thrown China
Simone,
under the bus a million times.
as I've said, these people are very pragmatic.
I know.
They just want competent people.
Why can't
They
you
don't
work there?
really have any tolerance for a lot of the DEI stuff of the West. But
Oh, I thought you were
my
going to say
favorite-
alcohol. Sorry.
It's alcohol. Yeah,
Oh.
alcohol is incredibly expensive in every single one of these countries, including Singapore.
You'll be a copper. Yeah, it won't work. Yeah, I mean, God, I mean, we can barely. I mean, with the alcohol taxes here, the Pennsylvania alcohol industry is such a weird racket. Anyway,
Owned by the state.
what we need to do though is discuss now, does this paradise of post-scarcity for citizens in these countries produce better outcomes? Because that's again what we need to be asking, and that is what we talked about in our universal basic income episode. Because while people were like, yeah, I'm definitely better off, by measurable policy outcomes, in the words of Kelsey Piper, who wrote the blog post that we read, not really. No. So let's start with happiness, because everyone just cares so much about happiness. We don't, but people do. So if we look at the World Happiness Report, because of course there's one, in recent rankings, the USA's score in 2025 was 6.72. It was ranked around 23rd globally, which is pretty good. Qatar, it has the latest reported score of 6.37. It's ranked about 36th globally. So while both countries are well above the median, which is around 5.4, USA consistently outranks Qatar in the happiness surveys, which is very interesting because you can imagine, describing the benefits I described, the villas, the free education, to most Americans, and they'd be like, that's all I need to be happy. That's all I need. So it's interesting that while Qataris benefit from national wealth and safety and generous government support, Americans still tend to report higher subjective happiness. And maybe this is due to some broader personal freedoms. Maybe it's just higher satisfaction.
Americans are happier than they are?
Yeah, like I said, Americans rank around 23rd globally, and Qataris as of 2025 are around 36th globally. So maybe
I can see why. I mean, I haven't, like, in my time there, the people I met are not as happy as the people in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting though, because when you ask,
well, also keep in mind the responsibilities they feel. So I think that this is also, like, when I talk with UAE friends and stuff like that, their life is often much more sort of planned out from day one than people in the United States.
Well, and where's the struggle? Like, where's the tension?
No, that's where the struggle is. It's in actually stressful stuff. You got to marry one of your cousins. You got to build up that relationship from like day. It's super important because you got to marry the right person to build family alliances. And you've got to,
it does sound stressful.
You hold all of these traditions, and you've got to host guests in just this way, with just these plates being brought out in just this procession. And then you've got to fast for like freaking half the year. And then you've got to do this, and you can't even drink, and you can't, I don't think they're allowed to gamble either. You can't. So how are you recreating with at hookah bars, which just gives you the jitters?
Welcome to Muslim sensitivity training. It is important for us to understand why the Muslims feel the way they do. First of all, there's no sex until marriage in the Muslim world. Now, this would be fine, except that in the Muslim religion, you also can't jack off. And what do we know about the places Muslims live? They live in sand. Now, put yourself in the shoes of a Muslim. It's Friday night, but you can't have sex and you can't jack off. There's sand in your eyes and probably in the crack here, and then some cartoon comes along from a country where people are getting laid and mocks your profit. Well, you know what? I'd be pretty pissed off too.
I don't know. What I always think of is, and I'm sending this picture to you on WhatsApp, is that famous photo of the falcons that the Saudi prince bought seats for on a plane. And I'm just like, I don't know, like are buying seats for your falcons on an airplane, is that a sign of human flourishing? Like, are you thriving if you're flying around your birds on an airplane?
Oh my God, I had no idea it was like this. So literally the entire middle row is just falcon seats.
Yeah.
Falcons on, what the heck?
And these are the falcons that are flying in coach.
This is like a
on
big thing there. I've heard, I don't know the full story here because it's been a while, but my sister almost married a prince from the region who was really into falconing. Now part of me wonders if it was this guy. No, not
no,
almost
there's a
married. Like
lot of people into falconing,
they
but I'm
weren't,
just
they
like,
weren't like, it was like a proposal or something. I don't understand the specifics of it. I just remember hearing this story at one point.
I'm just saying, like, I don't think I would be happier if I had that level of money.
Yeah,
It
I would
really
not be
doesn't look like
happier
a
with
happy
with
life.
20 falcons. That does not make me happier having
Yeah,
it doesn't even
it's
seem like
not.
a particularly fun hobby. I mean, different people are into different things, but
Yeah, I'm just,
um
money only goes so far. So anyway, happiness, that's not necessarily the thing. So let's go to health, right? Okay, so a lot of people, we've covered a lot of different surveys on what people value the most, and health is up there, really ranked high, especially among Gen Z, Gen Y, millennials. So let's look at that. Let's compare the Gulf states that have all this money with the EU, with the UK, Canada, and also in the US. So broadly, let's keep in mind first for context, healthcare is universal and high quality in the Gulf states, in the EU, in the UK and Canada. They have nationalized healthcare. You can get healthcare. It's just part of the package. In the US, health insurance is patchy. It's really expensive. Not everyone has it. It's sometimes if you're at the poverty level, you get free healthcare. It's confusing. If you're
yeah.
Asmongold and people think you're homeless, they're just not going to bill you with
I
emergency
love that
room.
happens to Asmongold on multiple occasions. Hospitals not charging him.
I love that.
Because they thought he was
Everyone just thinks he's a homeless man. I love him so much.
homeless privilege.
so anyway-
no, it's so weird. Like all of these weird, like libelous attacks and slanderous attacks I've seen against him recently that I didn't see before.
I think that's because his profile is rising and people now see him as a threat. They're like, because how do you compete with him? You can't.
You can no, especially if you're a leftist, because you can't paint him as like a rich elite, right?
Yeah.
Like you may have
He's
money
not-
because of his streaming now, but he still lives in a place that looks like a crack house.
Yeah.
He doesn't even like put all of his teeth in because he's like, they don't see that on camera.
Yeah, he just does. He did the side that shows up on camera. Anyway, so I just want to say, like, because obvious spoiler alert, the US doesn't rank the best for health, but also we don't have universal healthcare and all the competition does. And I actually think we're doing pretty well. So the life expectancy in years for the US is 78 to 29. And then the best ranking one is the EU, where it's 84 to 80. But honestly, like 78 versus 84, like honestly, like you're old, your quality of life isn't that great anyway. Like I'm not mad about that, especially considering that healthcare is more spotty in the United States. So in Canada, it's 83, UK 81, EU, like I said, 80 to 84. In the UAE, where we have all this money, it's 79. The USA is 78 to 79. All right. So in post-scarcity, futuristic AI utopia world, they're not necessarily living longer. Qatar, 80. That's 1 year more than 79 in the US. Kuwait, 78. All right, at the lower end of the US.
And then this is the thing, is that these are the countries where it's managed the way we would manage it if you had the top minds working on it.
Right, because if you were to ask like a
a
person in the US, so like, well, what would it take for us to get to 84, like in the EU? They'd be like, well, of course, universal health care. It just needs to be paid for. Well, guess where it's paid for the most generously? How are they doing? The same as us, okay? And what I think the big factor here, though, do you want to guess what it is, Malcolm?
What? Tell me.
It's obesity. They're fat. They're fat like us.
Oh. Well, especially if your whole body can be covered easily.
That's true. The billowing clothes, you gotta, they need to introduce the Star Trek uniforms. They already have the post-scarcity society. Introduce the spandex. You're going to shame them into being thin right away. Right away.
They never do it. So, I mean, one of the things I love about these environments, if you're not familiar with them, is in the United States, pretty much, and this is true across Western cultures, when you are in upper class environments, like at an office or something like that, especially like an elite office, you're often expected to come in a uniform, like suit and tie, right? In very few cultures. In Texas, where I'm from, you can, if you are Texan, get away with modifying that, with jeans and a cowboy boot and belt and a bolo and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Minor modifications, but they're one usually reserved for Texans. You'd be seen as pretty weird if you were a non-Texan and you did that. And but in Texas, I think it's one of the few cultures where they on the broader side think it was kind of cool that you were that into Texas culture. They're not going to be like, you're appropriating my culture. They're like, that's cool. But in the UAE, when you are in, and this is also true in Qatar, but it's like different outfits. When you are in like high society, very like wealthy, like business office or whatever, they wear their traditional outfits, which
They look pretty awesome.
I think is really cool.
Yeah.
I think
But
that's
you're
a good
right. They're a
thing to
little
do.
forgiving when it comes to those inclined to
But you could
rotundities.
be quite obese in these traditional
It
outfits
still
without
look
anybody
really
noticing.
killer. Yeah, it still
Yeah.
look.
It reminds me of St. Andrews, where at the end of winter, so I went to school at St. Andrews, which is in Scotland, and at the end of winter, they do this thing called May Dip. But obviously, over winter, everyone's dressed in very, like, layered, puffy clothing. And at May Dip, I remember being shocked about how many of the girls had become quite fat without me realizing it because of all the puffy clothing that they were wearing. And this is why when you normalize outfits that hide how obese people are, people just naturally become more obese. Moto Moto would have had a field day at May Dip.
I like them big. I like them chunky. I like them big. I like them plumpy.
If you look at the male ones, they're sort of like robe thing draped over you. Think Jedi. They all walk around dressed like Jedi.
Yeah.
And so would you?
The more you think about it, it is really a sci-fi post-scarcity world.
Yeah, how fat does a Jedi need to be before you notice?
I mean, yeah, right.
And you're like, well, you notice in the neck, and it's like, no, they've got things that cover the neck, so you wouldn't even see that.
Tell you what. But yeah, so that's it's the obesity, it's the nutrition. Both the Gulf states and the U.S. diets, they're much more calorie dense, whereas EU diets are healthier overall. Also, the mental health situation in the West is actually much better, or at least like it's hard to kind of read this. Maybe you could argue maybe that the Gulf states are better because they have a stigma against mental health problems and just don't treat them. But as far as some people are concerned, the Gulf is improving. There's less stigma, but it's still far behind the Western countries. And I'm not sure if that's good or bad. We saw from the happiness rates, though, that like they're not as happy. So let's talk about birth rates.
On our show, we often say that the U.S. mental health industry is a bit of a scam, which mostly perpetuates mental health problems rather than
makes it worse. Doesn't make it better.
And I would imagine that they probably deal with this stuff much more directly in
they're like nut up
stop acting sad, you weenus.
For matter. Stop hyperventilating. So mental health, we're just gonna whatever. But birth rates, okay, this is kind of the key indicator of health, right? Like, are you perpetuating your genes? Like, you're fit or you're not? You know, that's ultimately what it comes down to. Kind of. I mean, it's not as bad as I thought. So Kuwait, which has like, the closest to the UBI situation, it's 1.5 to 2.2. That's kind of a huge range. So I don't know what to do with that.
Way below the US though. Yeah,
so the USA is 1.6-ish. So like 1.5 to 2.2.
Keep in mind, we don't get paid to marry in the United States.
I know. And you don't get like everything taken care of, get subsidies for kids. So like, I'm not impressed given everything that they offer. In Qatar, it's 1.4 to 1.9.
Married. So something you're forgetting in these countries is if you are from like an elite family or something like that, or you are like an extremely high performer, who you marry is much more difficult to organize than it is in the US because you're typically marrying into a family network.
So you're saying it's kind of the Catholic situation here where like, because so much thought and effort gets put into getting married that they're overthinking it, getting married too late and then not able to have as much kids as they otherwise.
Yeah, that's what I suspect is really going on. So if you look at the United States, I mean, you just need to find somebody who is hot and you want to spend time with. You don't need to like go into who you're not first limited to only people within. And we've noted this isn't like bad genetically speaking, especially if you're talking about second cousins, which is actually the highest.
Third cousin, or
fourth. The highest genetic match. But in these countries, these are things that you actually pay attention to. You are marrying within sort of your population group. Second, it's a much smaller population. Like for me, when I'm dating, it's just broadly white people, right? Like there's a lot of white people. Well, sorry,
have you not dated a lot of non-white people?
I did date non-white people, but not that frequently. It wasn't actually, I didn't even have a preference really for white people. It's just, I happened to date them more. I don't know why.
I felt like white people responded more to my outreach on dating platforms.
Yeah, I definitely
dated Indian, Asian, Black. That's it. And white. Yeah.
But in these countries, I'm saying like even if you have a preference, right? You're still like broadly, I can go to the UK and find somebody, and no one's going to think that, like, none of my family is going to have a problem with me marrying somebody from the UK, right? Or Germany or France or really any part of the United States. If you are in, one of these countries, your like global population of people you can marry without your family throwing a banana is going to be Muslim, still Muslim, by the way, so not deconverted Arabs, likely within your family network.
Yeah, that makes it more complicated. That's a logistical nightmare.
Yeah. Anyway, continue.
Birth rates, Qatar 1.4 to 1.9. So like I would put that at roughly 1.6. Like they're not beating us despite having all these things. The UAE is even worse. It's at approximately 1.4. Again, compare that to 1.6 in the USA, where we basically offer no help at all to parents.
And keep in mind, when we talk about differential fertility rates and religion, and I'm like, Muslim countries and Muslim cultures have a very low fertility rate when you adjust for religion, when you adjust for income. That's what we're seeing here. It's the cultural system. And note, this cultural system isn't necessarily just their beliefs. When I talk about why their fertility rates are likely lower, I talk about the logistical difficulty of getting married in this sort of clan-based system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not like an inherently Muslim thing, but it is an Arab thing, right?
I wonder if it's also a little bit downstream of all these benefits. Keep in mind that education, high quality education, often international, sometimes university, could also be suppressing this by, again, shifting marriage from being a cornerstone to a capstone element of life, where like you get married after you get your education, and that's moving things back instead of having them get married before they go off to university. So that could also be a factor here. Also because it's government subsidized. You're like, well, I'd be stupid to not make sure I get this in before I start my family. There's something like that, especially if you're going to leave the country. It gets complicated. I don't know. But anyway, so the USA is at 1.6. And again, so Canada, the UK, the EU, while they're not the Gulf states giving you like a free house and free electricity, they still have free healthcare. And they're at 1.5 in Canada, 1.5 in the UK, and the EU average is 1.4. So they're doing worse than the United States at 1.6. So again, not really seeing the results we're looking for in terms of birth rate. So let's look at innovation, okay? A big sign that you and I would count with human flourishing beyond birth rates is like, are they contributing to the advancement of humanity? Are they moving us forward technologically, entrepreneurially, economically? Are they uplifting the human race? The 2025 Global Innovation Index, this is something created by the World Intellectual Property Organization, which I figure probably does a pretty good job at like tracking people introducing new tech. The USA ranked third globally. That's after Switzerland and Sweden. The UK ranked sixth. Canada ranked 15th. Top EU nations were just in the top 10 to 20 worldwide. The UAE is 31st globally. It's best in like the Gulf states. It's rising rapidly, but that's 31st. Qatar is 51st globally, and Kuwait isn't even in the top 60. And I can send you the beautiful ranking graph that shows sort of 2021 to now to 2025, and you can kind of see how they fluctuated over time. But you're not seeing Gulf states in there that just throw money at their people. Maybe they're too busy flying their falcons around. I don't know, but they're not. They're not using their money to innovate. And that's also something that I think about, is when you make people comfortable, are they going to invent new things? Are they going to move us forward? Or are they just going to, kind of like you said, be like broy, cunning and
like pretend entrepreneurship. And that's the problem with projects like Neom, right? Is it's all pretend entrepreneurship. It's a good idea on paper if anybody actually.
It's a cool idea on paper. I don't know if it's a good idea.
I don't hate the idea of trying to create a special economic zone with unique laws that is closer to Israel, which is really what they're trying to do, is to create like a tourist sort of a hotspot, and tech bro hotspot.
Dubai's done a really good job at becoming a like tech hotspot.
Like it can be done. Like Dubai exists, so don't, I wouldn't poo-poo Neom.
I hear you. I'm just saying, like, it's not showing up as an export of these regions, despite the fact that I would have hoped that in this post-scarcity Star Trek style world where everyone walks around like Jedi and has money for things and gets free education, that they would then. And I think people have this delusion that that's what happens. You just, when you have, when the government is your patron, you have free time to just sit and invent new things and make the world better and produce gorgeous art. And we're just not seeing that. I mean, even just look at the designs of these houses. It is like literally millennial grayish everywhere. It's so soulless. And it looks great. It looks great in a very AI kind of way. Not that like cool, funky, weird AI where like, build a mansion, but make it on a cliff and all pink and rainbow unicorn themed, but just like generic, optimal. So also we need to look at entertainment. Maybe I thought maybe, okay, it's not innovation, it's entertainment. But no, I mean, like India has Bollywood. Of course, we have Hollywood. South Korea is able at being a top tier in terms of cultural exports, and
very little cultural exports come from this part of the world. It's like actually kind of shocking.
Anything, it is a regional player is sort of how it's categorized in indexes. USA is a world leader, UK is top tier, Canada, Switzerland, and Germany are seen as strong. I don't really, but I mean, like the best that the Gulf states can be diplomatically categorized as
regional players.
Yeah, regional players. So in the end, that
really shouldn't be the case. I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, for example, Israel outputs like pretty successful movies. Like it's not that you can't, if you're a smaller country like that, output high quality.
Again, South Korea outputs amazing
South
things.
Korea, like,
they're super small.
Japan.
So yeah, Japan has produced amazing stuff. So yeah, I really don't. I don't think it's that. I just, yeah. So in the end, what I'm taking away from this is it is possible to keep your people afloat with jobs-based and in-kind support, not cash transfers. And that's kind of, if you're going to do UBI, if you're going to create a utopia for some select group of people using your AI superpowers and resources, give them guaranteed jobs and support and education and healthcare.
But let them suffer and fail if they're going to suffer and fail.
Yeah. Or, well, I don't know. Like, I actually think you need to give people more hardship and struggle if you want them to actually keep to produce cool things.
Failure needs to be a possibility in a system for thriving to happen.
Failure needs to be a possibility.
People aren't afraid of failing. If the whole thing can just be done again, if there's no real cost to anything.
Or if you introduced, I mean, maybe it's more of an attitudes thing. Like, I feel like maybe if this existed in America, we'd have a shot because Americans would still be so competitive with each other that, like, we would see a Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom by Cory Doctorow situation where, while everyone has their luxury villa and their free education and their perfect healthcare, they're still ruthlessly fighting for attention on social media. They're still ruthlessly fighting for whatever the lullaboo of the time is, for the few scarce resources that exist, for the Basquiat that everyone wants to collect. Like, they're still going to fight for things that are artificially or just circumstantially rare. And hopefully that Thorstein Veblen style of status and security never leaves us, because I think it is a huge contributor to both American happiness and innovation. So I'm hoping for that. I'm hoping that maybe that is the ideal scenario, is that maybe when certain populations, like an American population, is given these kinds of post-scarcity resources, they actually do keep fighting. But my intuition is that they won't, and that we'll get situations where no one is necessarily happier.
Well,
the birth rates aren't necessarily better.
Family culture, you need to build where, like, as I said, when I was growing up, it was always just me versus other people in my family, right? Like that was my benchmark of success. And I was told to not benchmark myself against the wider world.
Yeah, you genuinely didn't care. You could not care less about what other people were doing. You were like, or really, like, you benchmarked, like many of history's greats benchmark against Alexander the Great, they weep at the thought that like, oh no, like I'm the
Yeah, I
age he
often
was
felt
when he took
very
over.
bad that Alexander had accomplished more than me at
Yeah,
specific
so
times in
like
his life.
benchmarking not to a local peer group, but rather to either your own high achieving family or historical figures that profoundly changed the
I
world.
lecture to more people than Alexander did every day. Okay, more people get to listen to me and my ideas, and that's what I care about most. So in a way, I'm doing better than Alexander the Great.
I would say in many ways, I think it sucks to be a leader that's surrounded by yes men and simultaneously a bunch of people who would benefit from you being dead. It would be a very stressful lifestyle. I mean, he came from a family where like people just kept dying. Like, I don't know. I'm glad you're not Alexander the Great, just as someone who cares about your well-being and happiness.
Oh,
Plus, he was such a drama king. I cannot believe.
Was because he learned from like the
I know he
Odyssey
was
and stuff
trying
like
to
that.
model Achilles. I just
He
think
was
it's
trying
so
to model Achilles, but what a bad role model. They talk about like bad celebrity role models today. Achilles, worst celebrity role model.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. Like just trying to like to ape his toxic tantrums. But whatever.
That's how you be manly. Throw a toxic tantrum.
Yeah,
It
it's
lasts
very
days.
strange. It's very strange. So whatever. But yeah, I'm glad that our audience, which is so smart, you guys always humble me with like your insights, encouraged us to look at this. I think it is a good case study. And I think the biggest thing that I'm taking away from this is the smartest thing they did was you have to get a job. I'll guarantee you a job, but you have to give a job. And this is where we see a repeat of what we saw with the Civilian Conservation Corps of the New Deal in the United States in the Great Depression, which really did produce lasting good outcomes for those who participated in it. They had better health, longer lifespans, more wealth over time, I think, if memory serves. And I really do think that empowering people through work is the way that it goes. Work will set you free.
Yeah. Work. Oh God, Simone, you're so. Is that what we're gonna end this on? Gonna get us in big trouble? You just love throwing those grenades out.
I love you, Malcolm.
What
am I making you for dinner tonight?
Well, we've got the curry that is
Oh,
out.
crap. Yeah, but do you want me to like dress it up in something? You want me to make like
Actually, I was gonna say, do we have naan that we can like heat up?
We do. Do you want me to like make a pizza of it? Or do you
No.
just with naan?
Oh, actually, that's a good idea. And then you put some like mozzarella on top.
That's what I was thinking, but I could also just do it the way we've been doing bulldog, where I just heat it, like basically kind of dry it out into a curry meat pancake in the air fryer on a silpat. And then with cheese on top. Then I will probably put the cheese on top after I dry it out. And then I serve it to you like a curry meat pancake pizza with mozzarella cheese on top.
Okay, the one thing I changed about it is I put honey on top of it. It's clearly
that sweet honey that got trendy and that no one actually uses. It's supposed to go on pizzas, like spicy honey.
Oh yeah, hot honey.
But we can also just drizzle. We have real honey too, so like
I'd rather use
real honey.
Real honey. And because the like sweetness of the mangoes isn't really tasteable in it anymore.
Interesting.
And so I thought that honey might help. And cook it however you want. I love the idea of having some mozzarella in it. That could work really well.
Okay, so we're gonna do I'm hearing slamming. We're gonna do a curry pizza. It's gonna
I don't know if I would cook it on top of the naan. I will put it on the naan.
Oh no! Oh, I was just thinking like if you want to do it bulldog style.
Yeah,
But
like bulldog style, and then scoop it with the naan.
Okay, so you still want naan. Okay, yeah, I guess that's fair because bulldog has the rice things. What are those called again?
Yeah, so you don't need the pizza with the bulldog, but you do need it with the pizza crust, which is what we're doing with the naan.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good. Well, I
Love
love
you.
you. I'm gonna go get the kids. I'm gonna play with them and bathe them, and then when everything's ready for dinner. Hi, Octavian. You want to say hi to the? Hold on.
Hey, Octavian.
Yeah,
What are you up to?
I want to say like and subscribe for everybody. Like and subscribe. If you like and subscribe, give us a comment down below.
Did you just fart?
No.
He totally did. Oh, all right, buddy.
Octavian, you're a butt.
He just came over here and farted. All right. Game
Why
over,
did
man.
I just fart? started.
Simone, over and out. I got to get out of here.
Bye.
Oh, boy.
And I am loving you to death, my beautiful, beautiful princess. You are
That's
so
good.
wonderful. I love my new mic setup so I can go. 2 hands. No
So
hands, guys.
Fancy. So very fancy.
And you've got a baby, a new one, but you've had a baby on you for 5 years at this point.
I love that, and I never want it to change. It is the best. And it's nice. He's more awake now. He's more
Such a
alert.
luxury that so many women would do anything for.
I know. That's the thing is we know, having struggled with infertility.
Done with the last of these. So we will have 3 bonkers for the kids. I noticed that this bottle makes a very good bonker. So we've been washing them and we're going to store them and then set them all up so the kids can wail on each other with them.
Yeah. They've already had a lot of fun with him. I mean, what Indy insisted on doing, that why one of them got so messed up last night and so dirty, was that she kept walking she walks like a cowboy. She kept sidling around the kitchen and then like trying to drink out of it, and just looking super proud of herself. So
because she saw how we drink and she doesn't drink from cups yet.
Yeah, she wants to, clearly. So
Anyway.
All right, I will kick us off.
Okay, now you've got your shields. Let's see. No, shields. Shields will make it hurt less.